Okay, it looks like we are about at the attendance level that I would expect. It's about 100 people here, so let's go ahead and get started. And just as a reminder, if you know anyone who's going to be coming in late, of course, this is being recorded and will be on our website probably by the end of the week. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to Module 3 of Budget Bootcamp FY24, 2023. This morning, we're going to be talking about the share system and how it's most useful for budget analysts. And we'll also do a little bit of BFM training, of a very brief overview of BFM. So again, if you have any questions, please type them in chat, and we'll be sure to answer them as we go along. So just a brief overview of what we'll be talking about this morning. Well, first, we'll be talking about how to create budget journals in Share. We'll talk about the different types, components, and the process for doing so. And then I'll give you a little bit of a demonstration in Share of how to actually create one. We'll talk about other processes that are important in Share, such as routing and posting journals, creating department level budgets, and doing chart field requests. I'll show you a few, there's many different reports and inquiries that you can do and share. We don't have time to go over all of them, right? But I'll show you a few that I think are the most useful that I use quite a bit. And I'll show you how to run those. Talk about the 50% rule, what that means, and then we'll conclude with, like I said, a brief introduction to BFM, the budget formulation and management system that we use to do our budget request submissions and operating budget submissions. So that's the agenda for this morning. So I'm going to go over the slides first, talk about all the steps in doing all this. You'll see some graphics, and then I'll go into Share and show you how to actually do it if you've never done it before. So you see here at the top, if you're going to create a budget journal, this is the route that you take in Share to get there. So Navigator, Commitment Control, that's the main module. Budget journals, enter budget journal, and then add a new value. So you can also, if you're looking up a journal, you can click on Find, and to find a journal, you have to know the number or some other search parameters to find it, okay? So if you click Add, if Next is in the journal ID box, that will auto-generate a number for the journal ID. We're up in the millions of journals now. But you can also, some agencies prefer to enter, they have some sort of naming scheme for their journals, like 66723 BAR 01 or something like that. If you do that, you can do that. That's fine. Or you can just have Share give you a number. Either is fine. Okay, and then just remember, kind of like we talked about yesterday, all journals that are establishing a budget will need both an appropriation journal and a revenue journal, right? You need to do it on both sides. Now, if you are going to do a transfer journal, the route to get there is slightly different. So instead you go to enter budget transfer instead of enter budget journal. You see that there. And again, remember, these are used to transfer budget authority in the same ledger group. So for those category transfer bars that we talked about yesterday afternoon, you're going to do a budget transfer journal. And you can adjust the date as needed for when a journal needs to be effective. In July, we did have to do some corrections to FY23 that had already ended, in which case you might need to backdate the journal to 6/30/23 or 6, whatever the case may be. So you do have the ability to do that. So after you click on create a journal, this is the main page that you'll be faced with. This is the header page, so it's kind of the first tab. You do see your business unit up there on the left. So for example, this is a DFA journal, 341. And these are all the different fields that you need to enter in. So you might want to, if you have a copy of the slides with you, you might want to refer back to it, this page, because I'm going to go on to the next slide, which will describe what all of these different fields mean. Okay, so first is ledger group. So you've got a few different choices here. So a Pro P, that's your P code level expenditure budget, but it's at the category level, right? So 200, 300, or 400. Okay. Department, the ledger group, is your sub P code, your sub P code level expenditure budget at the category level. So this is again optional. Only larger agencies do this. Smaller agencies might not even use this. But this is where you find your 10-digit department code budgets are at this level. And also important to note that revenue is not entered in the department level budget. Only the expenditure side is. Detail, this is what you want to do if you want to see those 6-digit line item expenditures. They're not technically budgeted, meaning that, we don't really control them. They're not in the bill, obviously, but all of those 6-digit line items do roll up to your category total expenditures. Okay, but if you want to see all of them, that's at the detail level. You'll never use this for a bar, really, because we don't do bars at this level. But if you're running a report, like I'll talk about later, and you want to see that line item detail, you'll need to use the detail ledger group. Okay, so that's when you would use this. And then the last ledger group is revenue. And of course, that's your P code level revenue budget. So you can see the revenue side of your budget. Okay, the next field to talk about is budget entry type. So you've got two options here. And we talked a little bit about these yesterday, but original, that's used when establishing a budget for the first time. So in other words, new appropriations. So the OPBUD 3 journals that set up your recurring budget on July 1st every year, those are originals, okay? And then also every OPBUD 4 journal that you do to set up a non-recurring appropriation, those are also originals. So that's when you use original. Use adjustments for basically everything else. Okay, so that's for all bars, like we talked about, all BRFs, adjustments to non-recurring appropriations, all that stuff. So anytime you are adjusting an established budget, including those federal bars, like I talked about yesterday, those are adjustments. Next is long description. So here you can describe a purpose of the journal, which includes, reference numbers, if you have some sort of reference system, or the statutory citation of the appropriation, if that's what you're setting up, things like that. Alternate description, I usually don't see that used. It's optional, so you don't necessarily have to put anything in that field. Excuse me. Current effective date, generally you want to match the date that you established when you added the journal because you want it to be effective on that same date. So that's pretty simple. And the next is entry type. And you see several options here. And this is very important to get right because this is what determines how the journal gets routed. So basically, whether or not it stays within your agency for your approval and posting, or whether it gets routed to DFA and we approve and post it. Okay, so AGY are for agency level adjustments, such as department level bars. Okay, so like I talked about yesterday, these are those bars that you do at the sub P code level, at that department 10-digit code level that you have the authority to adjust and post yourself, and they don't go to DFA. So this is what you use for everything that you have the authority to do yourself, because these will not go to our queue, will not go to the DFA to be approved. Okay. Pretty much everything else that you see on this will go to DFA. So it's just a matter of selecting the right entry type for the type of action that you're doing. Okay, so bar for any type of bar. BRF, again, for budget reallocation forms, like we talked about yesterday. C bars, CBRF, or CBUD, those are capital outlay requests for our capital outlay bureau, depending on the type. OPBUD 3s, okay, these are what establish your section 4 budget. So in most cases, the way we do these is they are when you complete your operating budget submission in May, you generate OPBUD 3s in BFM, okay? And then we with a few exceptions for agencies that have some complications that we need to do manually. But most agencies, we take all of that OPUD 3 data in BFM, we turn it into a flat file and import it into Share, and it automatically creates your OPUD 3 journals. And so then we have to go into Share roughly June 25th through the 30th and go in and manually post all of your OPUD 3 journals. That way they are ready to go on July 1st, right? You have new budget in the fiscal year. So that's how OPUD 3s work. So like I say here, they're almost never created directly in Share, but it can happen. Also, sometimes if we see, if something got wrong in your original budget setup, then we might go back and do a technical OPUD 3 correction, in which case we would do an OPUD 3 journal, but we would do an adjustment. So occasionally we do those if we have to have some sort of technical correction to how your budget was set up. So next then are OPUD 4s. And like we talked about yesterday, that's what you use to establish a non-recurring appropriation, such as for sections 5, 6, and 7 appropriations in House Bill 2, or for the junior bill, all those appropriations. Okay, so after you fill out everything on the header page, you'll click on the tab. You see the different tabs here up on the top left of this image, and you can see the middle one is budget lines. So you'll click on over to budget lines, and this is where you enter in what you're actually trying to do with this journal. You see all the different fields in the columns in the middle of the page there. So you'll need to enter in information in each of these fields, again, depending on what you're doing. So again, I'm going to go over, take a look at this, and I'm going to go on to the next slide and describe these different fields. So the first field on the line page is the account. So this is going to depend on whether you're in the appropriation or revenue side of your budget. So you're going to enter in your expenditure category, 200s, 300s, 400s, or 500s if you're doing something in the approp or the department ledger, okay? Or the revenue line if it's in the revenue ledger. So by revenue line, I mean whatever the correct code is, for example, 499105 for general fund or 451903 for federal grants, something like that. Okay, and so then the important to note here, the second bullet, something that I think is a real flaw in the Share system, but it is what it is. Share does not stop you from entering the wrong account type in the ledger you are in. So for example, you could create an Appro-P journal and put in 499105 in the account, and Share would not recognize that as being wrong until we try to post it. So occasionally we will see that an agency submits a bar, but they put the expenditure category on the revenue journal or something like that because Share lets you do that. So please be careful of that. Next is fund. So here you're just going to enter the fund number for your journals. And you should know the number. Hopefully you know the numbers of all your different funds. But like with most fields in Share, you can click on the magnifying glass icon that's right next to it to look it up. And you just do a search. You can search by keyword or like, oh, I think it starts with a 4 or something like that. You can search by number as well. Okay. Next is department. So here it's going to, again, depend on what you're doing. So in the department field, you're going to use your P code for adjustments to program level recurring budgets. Okay, so basically all bars are going to be using P codes. Z code if you're doing a non-recurring budget or special appropriation. So if you're setting one up with an OPUD 4 or adjusting it with a BRF, then you use a Z code. If you're doing something on the capital side, then you use an A code. And then again, the last thing you might use is your 10-digit code like 4010000, etc. Those are for adjustments to department level budgets in a department ledger group. So again, that's for AGY entry type, right? Those things that you can do yourself. No, many times we get bars submitted to us that use the 10-digit code in the department field, and those are always incorrect. Okay, so those are only in things that you do yourself. Next is class, and I was kind of talking about this yesterday, but all recurring Section 4 budgets have the same class in a fiscal year. So basically every bar that you do that's a change to your P code budget is going to have the same class for every agency. So this year we're up to H0000 for FY24. So that's going to be the class you enter until next June. As opposed to that, each non-recurring appropriation has a unique class code that closely matches its Z code. So basically it's the same thing except without the Z. Okay, and then a notable exception to this is for those agencies that receive money from executive orders, like often DOT or Homeland Security. If they're setting up a budget for that money, then you use E20 and then whatever the year is, right? But the important to note that these go by calendar year, not by fiscal year. So every EO budget that is posted this calendar year will be E2023. So you don't want to use E2024, even though we're in fiscal year 24, it's by calendar year. So that's one of the few times where we actually go by calendar year. Next is the Bud Ref field. So much like with class, all recurring Section 4 budgets have the same Bud Ref in a fiscal year, and that always starts with a 1 and ends with whatever the fiscal year is. So again, all bars that are adjusting your P code budgets this year are going to have a Bud Ref of 124. Okay, and then next year it'll be up to 125, etc. Okay. For non-recurring appropriations, Bud Ref gets a little more complicated. But if you learn what these numbers mean, then it's pretty easy to understand. You just have to know what the numbers mean. So they're going to have 3 to 5 digit Bud Refs with component parts. So the first one is almost always going to be a 9. 9 means that it's a non-recurring appropriation, right? So on the previous example, it was a 1, that was recurring, right? Because it was part of your recurring budget. But here, since we're talking about non-recurring, it's a 9. Okay, and then the next one, the next two numbers are the fiscal year in which the appropriation began. So this is a little tricky because most of these appropriations, or a lot of them, like special appropriations from Section 5, they start towards the end of the fiscal year, right? Because the budget bill is passed and signed into law by the governor in March or April, depending on the year. And then as soon as the governor signs the budget bill, all of those Section 5 appropriations, unless they specifically say otherwise, are valid. Okay, so this year, everything in Section 5 began its life, so to speak, in April of fiscal year 2023. Okay, but then they're valid through all of the remaining fiscal year, or excuse me, the next fiscal year, FY24. Okay, so everything in Section 5, again, unless the language specifically says otherwise, but everything in Section 5 this year has a Bud Ref of 92324. 23 because it started in fiscal year 23, and 24 because it lasts throughout the next fiscal year. Okay, now it's a little confusing this year because that 24 on the end does not mean fiscal year 24, it means 24 months. Although that's also confusing because it's not actually valid for 24 months. It's more like 15. And I know that's a little confusing, right? But if you think about just like the year when it started and then all of the next fiscal year. And sometimes you'll see longer appropriations that are valid for like 4 years, and they'll have a Bud Ref of 92348 or something like that, or 92360. Okay. If it's just valid for the 1 year, then you don't have to have a 12 on the end. That's kind of the default. Okay, so a question here. So if a Z code, if the Z code is 92336, when would expire? Good question. So that would be valid in 23. So think of this way. 23 would be the first 12 and then two more, right? So that would end on June 30th, 2025, because that's valid in FY23 plus two more years. So it's valid through fiscal year 2025. So you can see kind of I have that written out there. And a 3-digit BUDREF like 921 is only valid in the denoted fiscal year. And of course, if this gets confusing, all of this is on the table of budget code. So you don't have to figure these out yourself. We do that for you, right? But you need to know what that means, of course. How long is this appropriation valid for? So that's what the BUDREF means. Let's see, our BUDREF is 92224. That would have expired on June 30th of this year, because that was first valid in FY22 and it was through FY23, which is now over. So that one is expired. Okay, the next field is amount. So obviously here you're just dealing with the dollars. So you're going to enter in your amounts and whole numbers, don't round them or anything. Enter any reductions. If you're doing like a category transfer or a decrease bar, enter those as negative numbers. And then positive numbers will show us credits, negative is debits, and then make sure your debits and credits, of course, equal if you're doing a transfer journal. Of course, a lot of journals will have multiple lines. So if you're doing that, you want to click on the plus. That will create a new line and it will copy all of the info to the next line. So then you'll probably need to go in and adjust as needed. Okay, a lot of those, a lot of the fields might be the same, so you don't have to change them, but you'll probably have to change, the account or the amount, obviously, so make those adjustments. So then once you're done entering in all the line informations, you click on save down below, and that's when it'll generate a number for you if you didn't give it a custom one. So then you'll know what the number of the journal is. Okay, and then to submit it for review or to go up the chain, basically, there's a drop-down menu above the lines. Let me go back to the page, the slide here, show you. So here you can see in the middle, kind of middle top there's a box called process, post journal, submit for approval. Now you won't be able to post it, but from that drop down, you can click submit and then process, and that will move it up the chain. Okay, like I said here, the submit for approval checkbox should auto-populate. And so this is just some further notes on how journals get routed and then posted. So we think of level 1 as the journal creator, the agency user that actually creates it. And then when you submit it, it should be routed to the next level of approver at your agency, right? So most agencies have at least 2 levels. So then level 2, we think of as agency approval. So again, if it's that AGY entry type, then you have the authority to approve in queue and post the journal. So there, from the drop-down menu, you click on post journal and process it in the lines tab. Okay. Or for anything else, any other entry types, when you approve it, it's going to go to DFA for our approval. So any other bars or such. Okay. So then level 3, that's DFA approval. So there's a 2-step process. We have to approve it first in our queue, and then we have to go find the journal in the commitment control module and then post it. Okay. Please do not ever attempt to post your own journals that are not your AGY entry types. This is another flaw with Share 9.2 because they did not take DFA into proper consideration, but it is occasionally possible for agencies to try to post their own journals. So please don't. That is our job to review and post. Okay, so please don't do that unless it's an AGY journal. Let's talk a little bit about journal errors. So there's a few different types of errors that you can run into. Also, some of these are referenced on that bar error page that I referenced last night, or sorry, yesterday afternoon. That's on our website. But anyway, here's a few different types of common errors that you might run into. Another annoying thing about Share that I talked about a little while ago is that a lot of these errors, it doesn't catch until we try to post them. But one that it will identify when you are creating a journal is the one on the left there, invalid values. So sometimes if you try to put in something that's not recognized, which basically means if you try to search for it with the magnifying glass function and it's not found, then it will show us an invalid value, right? Like if I tried to put, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the class code field and it's not recognized, then that's a problem, right? So it will tell you like this is an invalid value. Now, sometimes you might be sure that the value is correct. Like, you're looking at the code table and you're sure it's correct, this class code or this Z code. If that happens, please contact your analyst. It might be something, we activate hundreds of these codes every single year. Occasionally we miss one or something. So that is something that we can resolve for you. So if it's something that actually does need to be fixed and activated in Share, let us know and we'll get on it and we'll take care of it for you. So like I said, most errors Share does not really recognize until we try to post it. So to try to avoid that situation where we get an error and then we have to go back to the agency has to correct it, and then sometimes the journal gets canceled and you have to create the journal again from scratch, and it's just a real pain. So we try to avoid having to do that. So, when you're completing your bars, your output 4 journals, that's why we stress, please take the time to make sure everything is accurate and correct to reduce these errors that we then have to go back and fix. Okay. So there on the right, you can see some examples of some of the most common errors that we run into when trying to post. And if you click on the error of up at the top right, it says error when we try to post it, and you can click on that, and then you'll get some details about what the error was. So here are a few examples. Child exceeds parent. That's when the department level budget was not reduced before attempting to reduce the appropriation budget. So like I talked about yesterday, that's why it's very important if you do department level budgeting and you're doing a category transfer bar, you have to reduce your department level budget and post that journal AGY entry type before we can post the parent level transfer. So make sure to do that. Otherwise, this is the error that we get. Exceeds budget tolerance, so there's not enough available budget to reduce by journal amount. So this would happen in a transfer journal where you're trying to transfer $500,000 out of the 200 category. And when we try to post it, you only have $300,000 left. And so you can't, reduce a budget lower than zero. That might happen sometimes when some sort of unexpected expenditures hit the budget, in between the time that you submit the bar and we post it, right? Especially with that 10-day wait. So it's important for you to plan these things out and make sure that you're not going to have that happen. Otherwise, this is the error we'll get. And then another one is value not at CF. CF means chart field. So value not at chart field level. And this could be multiple possible things. But it's generally some sort of incorrect entry in the account, the department, or a class field that Share didn't pick up on because for some reason it was valid. So this is where you would see the revenue accounts entered on the appropriation journal that I was talking about earlier. So Share will let you do that, but then it will catch it when we try to post it. So again, be careful of that. Note here on establishing department level budgets. So again, not all agencies do this. If you're one of those bigger agencies that do, then it is kind of up to you to create them yourselves. So these are your lower level budgets that use 10-digit department codes. They roll up to your P code budget, right? Obviously, they can't go over your P code budgets, but they can be useful as a way to subdivide your P code budgets. And again, they're not on the revenue side, they're only on the expenditure side. Again, these are generally not controlled by us. We only really control the P code level budgets because that's where your budget is appropriated at. But like I said, really the only time that we really care about these is, again, those decreases for category transfer bars. Okay. So you can create journals and share yourselves to set up your budgets. You can post them with this July 1st effective date. But so you can create them like in June, but you can't actually post them until your analyst lets you know that your P code level budget has been posted. So this should be like in the last few days of June or so. Your analyst lets you know that your Pro P level budget is posted. So then you can go in and post your department level budget, right? Obviously, if you try to post your child level budget before your parent level budget is posted, that'll be a problem. That'll be an error. Okay. If you're creating these journals, you're going to use ledger group department and entry type AGY. Account fields should be your expenditure categories like 200s, 300s, 400s. And then use the same class and BUDREF as the current fiscal year recurring budget. So it's the same as your P code level. And this is just an example of if you were doing, if you were setting up department level budgets, this is how they would look like. Okay. See ledger group department, entry type AGY, etc. Okay, let's talk a little bit about chart field requests. So these are used to establish a new fund, inactivate a fund, create a new department code, a new 10-digit code, change the accounting structure, etc., etc. So these are reviewed and approved by both financial control and us. So to find this in Share, you see the different, or sorry, you see the path there to find it under, so you start at Setup Financial Supply Chain and end up at Chart Field Request. So you complete and attach the appropriate fund or department maintenance form. Ensure info on the form matches what you enter in the share. This is mostly an FCD thing, but I did want to point it out here because, I know some agencies have to do this fairly frequently. So this is where to find it and to enter in the information. Forms are on the Financial Control Division's website. And if you need assistance, feel free to reach out to your analyst or the Financial Control Division or the Share Help Desk, so they can help you complete and submit these requests. But at least want to point out this is where to find them and where to do them. Let's see here. Question here. Would department level budgets be helpful for tracking multiple projects from large federal funds grants? Or do you recommend a separate system for tracking tool? That's one way you could do it. So you could put each federal project in a different department code. There are some other ways to do that, like sub-accounts, the environment department puts different grants in sub-accounts, I know, and then you can put multiple revenue sources in one sub-account, but label the sub-account like, okay, this is for this project or whatever. So that might be an option. But also you could, if you want to have that control, that's the department level might be the best way, right? Because you're setting up a budget for each project at the department level, and that controls the budget for that project to make sure that you don't go over it. Or, so that might be an option worth looking. I don't want to say for sure because I don't know, your budget intimately, but that might be an option worth looking into if you're looking kind of for that extra level of control. If you're talking about the 675 million, like that's getting federal, you do have to keep in mind whether it's recurring or non-recurring. Like department level budgeting is for your recurring budget. That's, stuff you get every year. If it's one huge chunk of money that you get at once that you're going to then spend down and then it goes away, right? Then those are going to be budgeted on a non-recurring basis. So that's not really for department level budgeting. But there might be other ways to subdivide. I mean, it's a good point that $675 million, if you're budgeting it in one Z code or whatever, is a lot to dump in. So but we can probably work with you and Cecilia to come up with a good way to divide that out. Okay, let me get out of here for a second, and now I'm gonna go into share. So bear with me, please be patient. Okay, so here's my share homepage. I keep it pretty simple, I guess. Oh wait, I lost my chat. Hang on one second. Okay, there we go. So click on continue here. I get to my home page. Here's my, as I said, I could fill this up with widgets and all that good stuff, but I don't for whatever reason. But if you want to do that, then feel free. So here, just as to show you guys, here's the button for my approval queue. So if I click on this, basically I'll see everything that's been routed to DFA for approval. You can see we have some here dating from last year. We need to clean these up. Hopefully all of these can go away because if they haven't been posted by now, they're probably obsolete. But then if I go down here to the bottom, I see all the, we're getting into, so basically everything, all this stuff that's been submitted in July from all the different agencies, this is what they look like when they show up in my queue for approval. So if I was going to approve this one, just for example, I click on it, and then I see basically what it looks like, kind of a preview of what it looks like. This one's actually, as you can see, this one's actually for capital, so I won't be dealing with this one. But then I could approve it or deny it. Usually I'm going to approve it. If I say, oh, I'm going to deny this, I am required to put some reason in this box as to why I'm denying this. So we don't do that often. We would prefer that they actually go back and fix them without us having to deny them. But occasionally it happens when we deny journals. Okay, so that's how I approve things. So now let's say I was going to create a journal. So I'm going to open up my nav bar over here, click on menu. Here's my commitment control. So I'm going to go into budget journal. So again, here's my choice. Am I going to enter a budget journal that's for an increase or a decrease, or am I going to enter a budget transfer that's for, transferring something from category transfer or something like that? Let's go ahead and do enter budget journal. It's going to default to add a new value. Again, if I wanted to find a journal that had already been created and saved, then I click on find an existing value. And so, since I'm DFA, I can look up any agency I want. You're probably just limited to yours, right? Board authority. And I can search by journal ID if I know the journal ID. It's always annoying. I always have to delete my name here because it thinks that I created every journal. So let's say I wanted to look up Board Authority's OPA 3 journal. So I know that date's going to be July 1st. So then I click on search, and there you go. I see Board Authority's OPA 3 journals. So I can just review those if I want to. See, they're already posted, the original. Click on lines, and here you go. I see their different funds and their operating budget for how it was set up on July 1st. Okay. So that's how I can review existing journals. We go back to, so if you're going to add a new value, then first you're always going to just select your business unit, or it should be selected for you. Again, at DFA, we can create journals for any agency if we need to, just because that's our job. But usually we prefer agencies do it. You click on add. So like I said, this will take me to my budget lines page, so I can select what ledger group I'm doing. So let's say this is an appropriation. I'm going to do a bar. So a bar is always going to be an adjustment, and it's a need to submit it to DFA for approval. So it's an entry type bar. Okay. Bar to increase for federal grant. This is not a good description, just a sample. So then I'm going to click on over to the budget lines page. And here you enter in all the stuff that you need here. So my fund, I don't know many, I'm not DFA's analyst, so I don't know their funds very well, but you just click on whatever. DFA, of course, has a ton of different funds, but let's say, oh, this is in the Jobs and Growth Tax Relief Fund. Speed type, you probably don't need to enter account again. I'm on the appropriation side, so we're going to do 300s. See, it's contract. Department's going to be my P codes. But notice that, that all these A codes and 10-digit codes, they're all in here as well, right? So this is where you have to be careful, because Share will let you put the wrong thing in here, right? But I care about DFA's P codes because I'm doing a P code bar. So I'm going to search for P, and I get my P codes there. So let's do P541. Class is H000. I didn't have to do the search bar on this, I just did. BUDREF 124. And then you just enter in your amount, right? So easy like that. Let's say this is 50,000. And then if I need to do a new line, I click on this plus here, and it copies everything down, which is usually handy because a lot of this is going to be the same thing. But I'd probably have to change the account, change the amount. At least have to do those. Okay, so that's really how you create a journal. I'm not going to save this because it's some stupid journal I made, and I don't want the folks in DFA's ASD to get mad at me, so I won't do that. But if I'm going to submit it, I click on Submit Journal, and then process over here, and that should work. Okay, so that's how you create a journal in Share. So let's see, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. So we'll be back here at about 9:55 or so, and we'll continue on with reports and other stuff like that. ASD Administrative Services Division. Most bigger agencies have one of those. Okay, 30-second warning here. I think your new interpreter will have camera access. I think it's on for everybody, but type it in chat if you have problems. Alejandro, I'll get to your question here in a minute when we talk about that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So next, I'm going to go over a few different types of reports that you can use and share that might be useful to you. And again, like I said at the beginning, there's many different reports and inquiries and stuff that you can run. I wouldn't even call myself an expert on all of them. I just, know a few that are especially useful for me. And those are the ones that I'm going to show you today. So first, let's start with the budget overview report. And again, I'll go through the slides and then I'll go back and show you how to run a couple of these. So this is found under the commitment control report, or excuse me, commitment control module under review budget activities and then budget overview. And it shows your budget, your expense and encumbrances for a P code or other budgets. So it could be a Z code or a department code for a certain number of fiscal years in the selected ledger group, right? So you could do the appropriation ledger, that's probably the most useful, or revenue, or if you want to get really picky, you can run this at the detail level as well. So this is what it looks like. And again, I'll show you that and share. So again, take a look, and then I'll be talking about the different fields and what to enter in them before you run the report. So in the ledger group, you can look at the expenditure or the revenue budget or the detail ledger group. Again, if you want to see expenditures at that 6-digit line item level, you can put them there. Type of calendar, generally what I use, and again, I'm not an expert, but I'm just going with what I use, what I find most useful. I use summary accounting period. That seems to give me the best data. And Calendar ID SM, which I believe just kind of correlates to summary accounting periods. So that's why I use that. And so if you are doing this by fiscal year, enter 1 in both period fields. So because the period is the fiscal year, right? So it's FY22 is your period, then that's all in period 1. Okay, so that's why I use period 1 in both. Okay, and then down below that, you enter in any chart field criteria that you want to specify. So percent is you leave that in any fields that you want to return all possible values. So there's no like filter or specification. So that's what you're going to leave in there. So that's what you're not going to change if you don't want to be specific. Okay, you'll enter in the same value in both the from and the to value, excuse me, the from and the to fields if you only want results for that value. So for example, if I want to see the accounts and I want to see the 200s, 300s, and 400s, then I would put 200 in the from box and 400 in the to box, right? But if I only want to see the 200s, then I would put 200 in both boxes. Okay, that's how that works. Account, this is where you're going to enter your range of accounts that you want to see depending on what ledger group you're in. Again, if you're at the detail level, that's where you can see the 200, excuse me, the 6-digit line items. So you could specify which ones you want to see, or you can see all of them. And then the department, that's going to depend on what you're looking for. So you could do a P code, a Z code, 10-digit code, etc. Okay. And then once you've filled in all the information that you want to and need to, then you click on the search button that's at the top of the report and it will run. And this is what it'll look like when it generates a result for you. So you see here, what I did was I looked up the budget for a Z code, ZG6006. See that in the department field in the middle there. Class code BUDREF 922. So I wanted to know what the budget was in fiscal year 2022. And as you can see, the budget was $10 million. It was all in the 400 category in Fund 752, and it was all expended. So it's all done, right? So I think this was the Economic Development Department. They spent all of this budget, okay? So that's the sort of information that you get. Okay, hang on. Sorry, 1 second here. Admit the I don't have any limits on the who can come in. Um, all attendees should have the meeting the camera option is on. Can you not turn your camera on? Oh, all taken care of. Okay, we're good. Okay. Oh, not sure she's here yet. Okay, thanks. Okay, so we'll continue on. So okay, so this is again, this is what the results look like. If you see that little, oh, sorry, I need to do full screen here. There you go. Sorry about that. So you see this little box that I've circled over here on the left. That's the button you can click. And again, I'll show you how to do this. You can download the results. So, this was a pretty simple budget that I ran. You might get, if you ran a complex report, you might get dozens or hundreds of lines here. So this is, you can click on this button here to download the results into Excel. And that's, so you can manipulate the data, create pivot tables, make it format it, whatever sort of manipulation you want to do, you can do that by downloading it there. And that's why I like the budget overview report. It's pretty easy to work with. It's probably my favorite. Okay, next is the trial balance report. So this is a report that's useful for tracking revenue and expenditure history of funds, and especially for getting the fund balance of special revenue funds for BARs or budgeting purposes, right? If you, like we talked about yesterday, if you're going to do a BAR from fund balance, you need to show us that you have that fund balance available. So here the path to get to this report is a little different. It's found through the general ledger module. So then general reports and then trial balance fund/account is how you get there. And then this is the screen that will pop up once you do. So that's a few different fields to enter, but they're pretty similar. So you see your business unit, whatever fund you're looking at. You can enter 0 for all the funds, but often when you do this, you're looking for a specific fund, fiscal year, and then here the accounting period will be months. So here you do want to use months for your period. So when you're done with this, when you've entered in all these fields, you click on Run. So you see Nicole typed out this nice flow chart for you. So enter your fund, your fiscal year, and your accounting period. Okay, you can specify a range of months. Click on Run, then OK. And then one thing I don't like about this is that it's not very user-friendly or intuitive how to actually get to the data. So after you run, you click on Process Monitor. Let me go back to the previous slide. You see it up here in the kind of top right, Process Monitor. Click on that. And then you see that'll take you to this screen here. You see at the top of this slide, you see that refresh box at the top right. Click on that a few times until eventually you'll see run status success and distribution status posted. Once you see these two things, you'll know that the report is done. Okay, and then you have to go back to Report Manager. Report Manager will look like this. And then over on the left, you can see the trial balance was ran, and it's in an Excel format. You see .xls. So that's where you can download it, and then you will get the results in an Excel spreadsheet, and it will look like this. Okay, so you see this was the EDD's Fund 023, and you can see different line items. This will include everything that you might have in this fund, all the different lines. Here is your fund balance line. So you can see the fund balance is about 4.3 million. This is accounting, so a negative is a positive, right? So that's what the fund balance is looking like in 325,900, right? So they could submit a bar, assuming they have the authority to do so, right? They could submit a bar for a fund balance, up to 4.3 million if they have the authority to do so from this fund in 325,900. Okay. The last the last report I'm going to show you is called the Single Year CAFR Budget Status Report. I wonder if that's been renamed to ACFR, ACFR, I don't know if that has yet. But anyway, this is under the commitment control module, budget reports, and then print budget status report. It's a little bit simpler probably to enter than the budget overview report, although I still do prefer the overview report because I just think it's easier to work with. But you select your chart fields to include in the report and the sequence that you want them to be ordered in. So you see on the left side of the box there, I have 1, 2, 3 because I want it to be ordered in the order of bud ref and then account and then department. And then what values do you want? So I want this to be in fiscal year 19. And what P code do I want it to be in? That's under department P745. Okay. And then once you complete your chart field entries for whatever you're looking for there, then click on run, and then process monitor. Report manager is the same exact sequence as we did for the trial balance report. Okay, so you have to go through that whole thing again. The output for this report is going to be a PDF form. It looks like that, what you see below. So I guess it looks a little bit more official than the budget overview report, although it generates similar information. I'm told that the results do tie more closely to the general ledger than the budget overview. I think it's a little more up to date. So that's might be one reason why you would use it, but it's kind of up to you. If you want it in this format, use this report. Okay, so those are the three reports. Let me talk about this, and then I'll go show a couple of them to you. One last thing here, the 50% rule verification. So this is a little chunk of the State Budget Act statutes. You can find it 636. And so this states that state agency expenditures for the first 6 months of every odd-numbered fiscal year are limited to 1/2 of the approved budget for that year. So why does this exist? Well, basically the legislature thought this would be a good idea so that during election years, okay, so odd-numbered fiscal years, so like FY23, all of these possibly outgoing cabinet secretaries, if there's a new governor or other elected officials like the Secretary of State or things like that, or people like that, they couldn't burn through their whole agency's budget in the first half of the fiscal year and leave nothing for their potential successor in the second half of the fiscal year when they take office or are appointed in January. Okay, so they decided to make this rule, which basically ensures that at least half of an agency's budget is going to be available to new agency heads or elected officials that take office after an election. So our elections happen every 2 years and always in odd-numbered fiscal years. So that's why FY24 this year is not a 50% rule year. You do not have to worry about this year, but you will next year. It does not apply to a few select agencies just because of how their budgets work and the timing of them spending most of their budget. For example, the state fair, right? Like the state fair is in September, and so they spend a good chunk of their budget in September. So it would not make sense for them to have to hold back on their budget. It does apply to the agency as a whole, not individual programs. So like if you're over half on one program, but under half in another program, as long as that balances out to be less than 50, then you're okay. Okay. You can request exemptions from this for certain portions of your budget, and those have to be approved by the DFA secretary. So generally, when this happens, probably around this time next year, we'll send out some guidance letting people know that, hey, FY25 is a 50% rule year. If you would like to request an exemption, then you need to submit a memo to SBD and the DFA secretary saying, this is the part of our budget that we feel needs to be exempted from this requirement and why. Okay, then they'll be approved or not approved by our secretary. And then there's the actual verification. As around December 1st of each odd number fiscal year, you'll need to submit verification that they are in compliance with the 50% rule. Again, we'll distribute instructions and forms on how to do that. And the reason why I stuck this slide here is because you'll probably want to use all those share reports that we've been talking about to verify actual expenditure data and that you're in compliance with the rule. Okay, so that's the 50% rule verification. Again, not something you have to worry about this year, but you will next year. Okay. So before I close out this morning with BFM, let me get out of here for just a second and go back into share. So please be patient. Okay, back into share. Let me just show you how to run a couple of the reports. So we'll do the first, in the interest of time, we'll just do the first two here. And I think they're the most useful anyway. So let's do your budget overview. So commitment control module, you see review budget activities. And then I'm going to click on budget overview. And then if you get to this, I click on search and then it should take you here. And if you don't have this, if this inquiry doesn't exist for you, then hopefully, you can email the share help desk, or, if you've got some share expert in your agency, they can probably help you set it up. So here's what the overview form looks like. You'll see it'll probably save whatever you ran last. So again, I can run any agency I want to. I don't want to pick on anybody here. Let's look at SPO. Okay, so Ledger Group. You don't have to do anything here. It's always going to be Ledger Group. And then here's where I actually select it. So let's look at their appropriation budget. Again, let's do summary accounting period. Counter ID summary. Fiscal year. So let's look at 2023. Okay, again, these are ones. So here, I always like to specify the BUDREF because sometimes the years might capture things from other fiscal years that just kind of fell into it. But one way to avoid that is to always just specify the BUDREF of the fiscal year that you care about. So I want to make sure I limit this to their FY23 P code budget, right? So to do that, I'm going to use the BUDREF that specifies their FY23 P code budget, which is 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's a handy way to do that. I think I want to see everything else. I know they just have one P code, so we'll just see that. And I want to see all their funds. I want to see all their accounts. So we'll just leave the rest of those with percent signs. And then, so I've got all my info here. So I'm going to click on search. Give it a second here, and there you go. So this should be their entire expenditure budget. Even if it was adjusted by bars or things like that during the fiscal year, those should be caught up in here. So you can see their budget was about 4.2 million and they spent almost 4 million of it, right? So leaving a budget balance of about 246,000. You can see that broke out into the 200s, 300s, and 400s right there. Right? And you can scroll over to see what their expenses were, any encumbrances that are left, and their available budget, right? So like most agencies who, because they don't have, they have a vacancy rate and maybe haven't hired as much as they would like to, they end up with about 224,000 left over in the 200 category, which is, that's pretty normal. That's actually not that bad, right? 224,000 out of 3.8 million. That's not bad. So yeah, that's how that works. And again, here is the button you can click on and do download budget overview results table to Excel. And so you click on that, then it'll download it in Excel. It'll look just like this output, all these boxes. You'll see them and you can then have them in Excel and do whatever sort of, sorting, filtering, pivot tables, whatever you want with them. Okay. Can you replace the current interpreter with me? Can you turn your camera on? Um, I don't know. The camera settings are on, so I'm not sure why your camera is not showing. Sorry. Oh, there you are. Okay, thanks. It's okay. Glad we worked it out. Okay, so let's continue. So this is the budget overview report. So let me just show you real quick the other one, the trial balance report. So again, that's in general ledger, general reports, and this one here, trial balance fund account. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and run this one. I have no idea. I don't remember why I ran this for this DA here. It's probably been a while. So let's click on use all this information, click on run. So then you click OK. And then you have to go back to process monitor. So you can see here's what I just ran. So you see the run date time, July 26th, blah, blah, blah. But see the run status and distribution status, that means it's not done yet. So if I click on refresh, and this is kind of where you have to be patient, go get a cup of coffee, because it might take a few seconds or a minute or so, depending on basically how big the fund is. So you can see it does update as it's running. So now it says processing. This is still working. It shouldn't be that complicated. There we go. Okay, great. So now it says success posted. So now I know I can go back. Now that's the annoying thing is I have to actually go back to report manager right here. And it's not showing yet. Cool. Oh, there it is. Cool. So yeah, it took a little minute to get over there. So there you see it right there. So again, I won't bring it up because then I have to go to another window, but there it is right there. So that's where you just click on it and download it and get your trial balance report. Okay, so that's how to find that. All right, give me 1 second. We'll go back to the PowerPoint and finish up. Okay, and from begin. Oh, whoops, wrong slide. So the last thing to talk about this morning is a little bit of a very high level introduction to BFM. Again, BFM stands for Budget Formulation and Management. And that's the system that we use to create budget requests, submit budget requests, both recurring and non-recurring, and also your operating budget submission that's due on May 1st. So your September 1st budget request and your May 1st operating budget submission. Okay, the system's pretty new. We launched it 2 years ago now for the FY22, I think, request. No, 23, sorry, 23. So we're still kind of working through it and trying to improve it as we go, but I think it's worked out fairly well. So excuse me, you can see there, that's the link to where to find it. It's a web-based system. So you can access via any web browser, although I think it does work best with Chrome. So I would advise probably to use Chrome. Definitely the reporting module seems to work best in Chrome. There's your link there. Now, if you're a BFM user, you should have a user ID, but you don't have one automatically. You do have to get one. And if you need a BFM ID, email your analyst and we'll help you get that set up. Now, generally, we create your user ID the same as whatever your share ID is. That's not like automatic. That's our choice to set it up that way. It doesn't have to be that. So just keep that in mind. And we just do that just to keep things simple. And your password will initially be set to password. So it's a completely different system than share. So it's not like you have by default have the same password as share or anything. You'll just be prompted to change it on your first login. So you can set it to whatever you want. Okay. So no, I'm showing this. I'm showing the slides, Danelle. So if you see the slides, you're good. The slide that says Intro to BFM. So what's the process to request an access? Just email your analyst if you need one. There's a form to fill out, and I think it does have to be signed by, your supervisor or whoever's in, your CFO or whatever, because, we only want to give access to people who should have it. So, but they're basically fill out the form and submit it to us, and then we'll hook you up. That's how it works. So a few definitions about things that you'll see often in BFM. So stage is a step in a workflow. So users do have different levels of access, such as edits, reviewing, and submitting at different stages, depending on their role. So like if you're at the first level, then maybe you can only create and then submit to higher levels. And then if you're at the higher agency level, then you can review, you can send back or send forward, things like that. So a stage is the step in a workflow. Budget form and reports. So I still sometimes make this mistake myself, like 3 years into it, but I try to do my best. It's important to distinguish the difference between the two. So a form in BFM is how you enter budget data in BFM. So basically any screen or page in BFM where you can actually enter data, that's called a form. It can display historical and current data, and it allows users to enter numbers and text. Okay, so any place where you're making a change or entering data in BFM is a form. That's different from a report. A report compiles data from BFM and presents information. Okay, so you can't make changes on a report, right? That's just presenting the information, and they're printed from a separate module from where the forms are. Okay. And then PCF means personnel cost forecasting. That's a tool within BFM that creates base budget projections based on HR data and planning values that are loaded in the system. Okay, such as your insurance rates and other rates like that that are all loaded in. Creates a projection for your PS&EB cost that then you would probably need to adjust by building in those vacancy rates that we talked about yesterday. Okay. So like I said, this is just a very general high-level introduction to BFM. If you want a lot more information on BFM, there's a tab on the SBD website that has training materials and videos, like 4 or 5 different videos you can watch about how to use BFM. They're from a couple years ago when we launched it, but everything is still pretty up to date, I think, because it hasn't changed that much. The one thing is that if you're using it today, the screens will look a little different because it's gone through a couple refreshes in its UI and stuff like that. But really, how you navigate and all the buttons and things like that are still pretty much the same. Okay, and then like I mentioned yesterday morning, we also do budget requests and operating budget trainings. Budget request training will be coming up here in a couple weeks. And that's when we get into the individual forms in BFM and how to use them for what you're doing, right? For the budget request or the operating budget. So that's when we'll get into really specifics. This is just a very high level overview of what BFM is and how it works. So again, this is a little bit of how staging workflow works in BFM. So new budget forms are created at stage 1 and sent up the process. So stage 1, that's really when we start the FY25 budget request here in a couple weeks. Your initial forms are going to be at stage 1, and they're going to go up the chain. And by the time they actually get to being part of your operating budget next spring, they'll be at, I think, like stage 24 or so, if I remember right. So that's just how many different stages they go through. Basically, when you're done with it and you submit it, it goes to the next stage, right? And the 4 stages you see here apply to the budget request. So stage 1 is initial entry. Stage 2 is your manager review, and stage 3 is like the top person at your agency who can approve or make changes. And then stage 4 is actually to submit it to DFA. And then we take over and we start the executive recommendation, and the LFC starts the LFC recommendation at those stages after stage 4. Okay. So something to keep in mind is that once a user submits a budget form, you won't have access to that form anymore. So the example I use is it's like you're working on a piece of paper on your desk, and you're like, okay, I'm done with this piece of paper. I'm going to submit it over to the next level. I'm going to submit it to my boss. I'm going to walk it over to his desk or her desk, and she's going to take a look at it, and she's going to review it. And if she has problems with it, she's going to bring it back to me. Okay. So you can't see the forms anymore, but you can always still see the reports. So you can, if you still want to see the data, you can run the report to see the data. You just can't make changes at that point once you've submitted it. But your reviewer or manager will have the authority to send it back to you if they want changes to be made. Okay. Now, for some small agencies, you might be the only BFM user at the agency, and you basically need all levels of access because you do everything from creating the forms to final submission. So I think a lot of people are already set up with that who need it. But if you're a new person who needs that sort of access and you don't have it, email your analyst, and again, we'll get you set up. So this is just a little bit of general advice on how to navigate around BFM. And you see an example of a form here, the performance measure change request form, the 4400 form. So every page has a title. That's the title, performance measure change request, followed by a search area. You see the box down at the right side there where it says search, and then a list of records with the action option. So that's the list down there below with all the records. And then over on the right side are the action options. So you can submit it, right? You can submit it to the next stage if you're done with it. Or if you click on header, or a lot of forms also say detail, that's when you can actually go into each individual record and make your changes, okay? Quick search, so that's the search box over on the right. It does kind of have a live update, so if you're searching for some particular record by P code or whatever, you can type it in there and it should pop up in the records field down below. Okay, and then each form has some different tabs on it, and some of them might not have all of these, but pretty much all of them are at least going to have the header tab and the detail tab. The header tab will have like more general info, like your organizational unit, which is your P code, and the form name. The detail tab, that's where you generally enter in all of the information. So like if you're doing your expenditure budget, it'll have the fund, the account, the amount, a field for a short justification, stuff like that. And then a lot of them also have attachments, attachment tab, and that allows for you to attach documents, outside documents generated, outside of BFM, like PDF, Word documents, Excel files. So if you need some additional backup to justify your budget request, you've got this big report or data file you want to upload and attach, you can do it there. And then some forms also have narrative or explanation tabs that contain text fields for detailed narrative descriptions. Let me see questions here. Okay, that one was answered. Does BFM save what a previous manager keyed in, or does it just save what I have entered? Yeah, each manager should, everything that's entered should be saved, right? So if you submit it to your manager makes a change to the record or the form, then that would be saved as long as they save it. And then if they send it back to you, then you would see it updated, right, with whatever change. And there's actually a button. I'll show it to you if I have it. No, I don't. Looks like I have it. I'll show it to you here in a minute. But there's a way that you can click on Audit Trail, and that will actually show you a record or a history of all the changes that were made to records. So you can see who made changes and what changes that they made. Here you see an example of, again, this is so I clicked on detail in the 4400 form. So you can see that how you enter in actual data. Generally, anything that's marked with if you're looking at columns, I did have a base budget form available, but again, if you're doing the budget request, come back for budget request training, and we'll get into all the detail for that. What I mainly had available to use for this training was the performance measure stuff. So that's where you're seeing a lot of examples from that. But anyway, anywhere where you see an asterisk, that's where you can enter in data. Numbers should be in whole numbers without any sort of formatting. You don't have to put any commas or anything. Just put in the whole numbers. Once you enter in all of your data on whatever form that you're working on, make sure to click Save All at the bottom. And then most forms have a little button at the top that says Refresh. You click on the refresh button and that refreshes all the totals that are displayed on top. And I know that you can't really see those here because this is a performance measure form, but again, on the budget forms, that's the sort of things that you see. Okay. Narrative fields have an 8,000 character limit, which should be plenty. So you shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Something to keep in mind is that you cannot delete a row on a form because basically once you made it, it's like you made a change. So for auditing purposes, we need to see the history of that. So if you need to get rid of it, you have to manually zero it out and save it. So keep that in mind. And then, so when you're done with working on a form and you're ready to submit to the next stage, that's generally what you do is you go to that form, you click on the submit button. If I go back here, you see the submit button there over on the right side in the column. So click on the submit, and then yeah, usually it's next to the header and the detail buttons. You'll see a pop-up that'll look kind of like this that you see down here at the bottom right. And you'll select the stage to submit it to in the drop-down menu. Okay, and usually it's going to be like if you're the level 1, you're going to submit it up to stage 2 or stage 3, and then click on submit, and that will be done. And again, if you're a reviewer, if you're working in stage 2, then you could send it back to stage 1 if you want your stage 1 person to make some changes to it. Okay, and then like I said before, remember, once you submit it, it will no longer appear on your budgets if on that budget form, or excuse me, on that list. So we talked a lot about forms. Last, I'll talk about reports. So these are accessed in a different module. Okay, there's on your BFM home screen, there's a bunch of menus, and over on the far right, there's one called links. And if you go under links, there's BFM reporting. So this is where you go to find all your different reports. And yeah, if you want to, it'll open up a new reporting tab so you can create a new instance browser so you can have your forms and your reports open at the same time. Reports are updated in real time, so you can refresh them and see them get updated as you're working in forms if you want to do that. You'll select which report that you want to run, and then you'll have a pop-up here that looks like this, says prompts, and you'll just need to complete each prompt as necessary before running the report. And often you'll just have to you'll select your agency. You're not like us that can see every agency. You can see your agency. So that part should be pretty simple. Usually it's just running the right report. Reports will round and display numbers in the thousands. That's what we're used to from like the budget bill and things like that. So, you'll see 100.0, right, for 100,000. That's just what we're used to kind of working with. Oh, and this is just if you're around from the old times in BRS, we now display revenue lines on the detailed S9 report. So there's the S8, which is kind of your summary budget report of both sides, your appropriation and your expenditures. And then there's also the S9 report, which is the detail. Okay. All right, so real quick, what time is it? Okay, we got a little bit of time here, so let me real quick go into BFM and just show you a couple things before we wrap up. And if you've got any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, of course. It needs to be 1 second to get into BFM. When can FY23 performance measures be entered by agency? The data, like the end results, will be entered as part of your budget request due on September 1st is when you enter in that data. Sorry, I've got it open here. Okay. So here's my BFM home screen, what it looks nowadays. So when we start the request, here's all the reports again. These are all the forms. Oh, sorry, here I said reports again. I shouldn't do that. These are all the forms that you'll be working with when you start working on your budget request here in a couple weeks. Okay, and here's your like for requesting special supplemental deficiency, those non-recurring appropriations, you'll do that here. Bar language, like we talked about yesterday, you'll do that there. Performance measures, if you've been involved with that, these are the forms for performance measures. Rec cycle, so when so you'll never see these because you guys are at agencies, but when we start working on the executive recommendation, these are the forms that we use that basically take all the data that you entered and your agency request and move it over to these stages. So that's where they enter in there. Okay, these we won't worry about too much. And then links, here's BFM reporting, so that's where the reporting module is. Okay. So there's not really going to be anything under these right now because nobody has started creating their base budget request yet. So I really can't show you all that much. But let's try here. Yeah, I can't even create it because it's not, I'm not at the create stage, right? I'm at the review stage, so I can't even create one. But this is where it'll be, and this is what it'll look like. So unfortunately, I can't show you too much of the system today, but again, this will all be live and ready to go when we do request training. So come back for much more details on that. Okay, and then BFM reporting, here's what this looks like. It pops up here, and this is all your reports, right? You'll be working in request cycle and your different types of reports, budget, personnel, like budget. Here's all the reports that you can run, okay? Like your S8, like I said, that's kind of your summary. And again, these are going to be blank because you haven't entered in that data yet. But that's where you find all your reports. And you just run them again through this pop-up that I showed you, right, with your agency and pulling it over. And again, you should only see your agency here, state land office. Should have click OK. And there you see their 23 UPBUD and their 24 UPBUD, but of course their request is blank, right, because they haven't started working on it yet. But that's basically what it'll look like. Okay. So that's a very brief and quick overview of BFM. But again, we'll cover it in a lot more detail in request training. Okay, so that basically brings us to the end of this morning's session, but does anybody have any questions before we wrap up? Oh, oh boy, Alejandro, you're asking me questions maybe beyond my capability. Alejandro, why don't you send that in an email to Cecilia, your analyst, and we'll route it to somebody. That's more of that might be more of an FCD thing, but we'll route it to somebody who can maybe give you a good answer. Sorry. Oh, well, there you go. Amber at DVR can help you. So yeah, Amber, thanks. See, like I said, I'm not a huge expert on share reports there. So glad. Thanks for the assist. Any other questions? All right, well, seeing none, we'll go ahead and call this morning session to a close. So thanks everyone for joining. Hope you found it useful. And I will stick around for a few more minutes. If any other last minute questions come to you, feel free to type them in. But otherwise, we will see you all at 1:30 for the final session. Thanks, everybody.